All right, guys, we're going to get started here. Here is our last minute review session. So, test is on Saturday. This video is going to last roughly an hour, maybe a little bit more. And we're going to go over a couple things, review what you have to look forward to on Saturday. Just make sure our procedures are in line and making sure we have our ducks in a row. Okay? So, Saturday is the day. Saturday morning, you guys will get to go have fun and take this test. This is what you've been working for. This is why you took this class. Now you get to be benefited from it. You get to receive the benefits of the hard work. So, a couple weeks from now, you will get to log on and see your scores. You're probably looking at anywhere from 9 to 23 days. At this time of year, they usually are closer to the 9-day. In the spring, when a lot of people take it, it's usually a little later. But the ACT does a good job of getting your scores back to you pretty quickly. And it's weird. They just do it alphabetically. Sometimes it'll be 9 days, sometimes 16, sometimes 23. But it usually occurs and shows up on a Monday. You know, that's when they input the new scores. So if yours doesn't show up in 9 days, it usually will not show up until 16. And for quite a few of you, this is the official first step to applying to colleges. This gets your resume out there, okay? If this is the first time you have taken the test, especially if you're a sophomore, junior, or even younger, you have little pressure on you. This is just an opening introduction. There is no pressure on you. Now, you guys know if you're seniors, you do have a little more pressure on you because you only have a couple more chances to take it. And that's just being honest with you, right? That's not trying to scare you, just being honest with you. So, let's discuss a few things that are almost surely going to happen to every student during the test on Saturday. There's going to be some questions you don't know the answer to, and that's fine. If you don't know the answer to everything, there is nothing to panic about. But there's going to be a lot of questions, and especially because you took this class, now there's going to be questions that you do know the answer to. And so you're going to feel better about yourself. You should have confidence, without question. You have to be confident. All right. Remember during the test to embrace the grind. You're going to be there for 3 hours. It is definitely, at some point during those 3 hours, you are going to hit a wall. That happens to everybody. It happens to me when I take the test. I've taken the test 83 times. During those 3 hours, I hit a wall where I'm like, oh, I'm a little mentally exhausted. It's going to happen to everybody. Okay? And that is perfectly normal. So, what do we do when that happens? That's the key moment during the test. That's when you have to get aggressive and struggle through. You can't give up during that time. That's when you can make your score happen. Okay? So, it will be more than worth it. You will hit that point. It's an academic marathon we're going through on Saturday. You're going to hit a point where your focus is elsewhere. You got to stay with it. All right. So, the test process, just to make sure we are good to go on this. Here's a rundown of how things will go on test day. First off is the English. Now, they've shortened everything, right? 50 questions in 35 minutes. Okay. Math. Right after the English gets done, you'll take the math. 45 questions in 50 minutes. Then there's usually a 10 to 15 minute break. Then you have the reading. 36 questions in 40 minutes. You now get 10 minutes per passage in the reading. So that's increased. That's all good news. And then the science is the same as normal. 40 questions in 35 minutes. After you get done on the test, now this is really important if you are an underclassman. If you're a senior, this following advice is not as much importance to you. But if you're an underclassman, this is very important. What you do an hour after the test is way more important than you think. Because, I say here, when you get home, you need to grab a piece of paper, write something, start writing stuff down. The reason I say that is because right after you take the test, the things will be fresh in your brain. Especially when it comes to the English section and the math section. You'll be like, oh yeah, I saw a problem on this. And then I got to write that down and then tell Mr. Hermlinger, or tell whoever, tell yourself, more importantly, right? Oh yeah, there was a question on logarithms. I was ready for that. Or yeah, I saw a question on this, saw a question on areas of circles. Write that stuff down. You will be amazed how you got to do it quickly though. If you don't write it down and you wait until 6 hours later, it's gone. It's gone. So write it down right after you take the test. That's very important. You can even, at this point in time, you can even talk into your phone and record it. Say what you saw. That's important. Okay, so there I talk about that. Your thoughts about each section, what you thought of it. Was it easier? What strategies did you see that you used? Okay. What advice would you give to yourself if you took the test again? Say that while it's fresh in your brain. All right? That is an important thing. If you're going to take the test again, this is an important step. Now we're going to talk about 4 test day recommendations. These are things I have I have seen over 25 years of observing students. There are 4 things that you can do on test day that will absolutely put you in a better position. Number 1, being there on time. And being there on time means at 7:45 and being in your room early. So arrive early. If you're one of those people who likes to get there 1 minute before the bell rings, or likes to get there, and rush your time, that's not good. You want to get to where you're going early, okay? Arrive early, have your calculator ready to go the night before, have everything packed the night before. Your calculator, your pencil, you got it all ready to go. Seems silly, but that just takes stress out of it. When you arrive early, you can find your room, you can kind of sit where you want. It just calms the nerves down. Okay? So this is where I talk about, you're a late person or an on-time person, whatever it is. Okay? But there you see. I won't get into too much of a lecture here. It's just like a basketball game. If you were playing in a basketball game, you don't arrive 1 minute before ahead of time. You got to arrive early, warm up, same concept. Recommendation 2, get some energy into your body. Some of you are not morning people. I am a morning person. Some of you are not morning people, and you drag in the morning, right? You know who you are. You're just honest with yourself. You hate the mornings. The alarm goes off and it takes you a while. Well, get up. Oh, sorry. I'll go back here. Make sure you put some energy in your body. Get a good breakfast. Get something to eat. When you eat better, you feel better. And that absolutely makes a difference. Get up, get some energy in there. Now, I'm not saying knock down 4 Red Bulls and have a high and then crash about 9:30, because the test is still going on. Okay, so that's not what I'm promoting. I'm promoting just getting some good, healthy energy into your body. Number 3, physical exercise. That is correct. Unbelievably, when you wake your body up with physical exercise, things are going to get better. Now, it can be anything. It can be running, playing basketball, yoga, dance, lifting weights. I even had a student one time go out and hunt deer before he took the test that morning. Okay? He shot a buck. He was thrilled. His energy was up. When he went to take the test, it was no problem. He was fully awake. When you wake your body up, it's so much better. Okay? So think about it. It doesn't matter what activity you're involved in. We've all had an activity like band, basketball, football, something, a practice early in the morning. And then when you go to first hour, you're much more awake, aren't you? As opposed to just not having any activities, then you walk into first hour and you're dragging. So that's where I give that example there. Okay, number 4. This is the big one. Look sharp and dress up. Now, there is no stronger recommendation than the looking sharp and dressing up. And I'm going to tell you, there is a very strong correlation, because when you dress nice, you feel nice. When you dress sharp, you feel sharp. Okay? Same thing. If you're going into a job interview, you go in there looking nice. You have a nice presentation. You feel good about yourself. You don't go in there, wearing your draggy sweatpants and hooded sweatshirt and looking like a bum. Okay? So it's the same thing when you take this test. It's up to you. I'm not going to make you, of course. I highly recommend you look sharp. When you look sharp, you will feel sharp. And it absolutely is a positive correlation. The better you dress, the better you perform. So, Saturday's the day. Hey, I hope you get up early, get some exercise, something good to eat, get your body moving, look good and feel good. Okay? When you go take that test on Saturday morning. So you've studied and practiced, now's the time to get rewarded. And some literally get paid. So we're going to go over and review just a few strategies from each section. We're not going to go over everything, obviously. These are things you've learned previously. We want to serve as reminders to do the little things correctly when you're taking the test. Do the little things correctly, and it will make a difference. So we're going to start off in English. Do you remember these strategies? These were the very first things you learned in this whole class. I have 4 daughters. Each one of them has homework tonight. See, a lot of us wanted to say have. That's not correct. Correct answer is has. What does this really emphasize? You don't pick answers in the English section based only on what sounds better. Because if that's your sole judgment, it will not work. Okay? Next one. Neither of the students is prepared. Neither is singular. Remember that? Other one. All these words are singular. Each, neither, and none were the big 3. Each, neither, and none. If you remember those 3, because they're the ones that don't sound right. Just like I said, I gave you an example of each and neither there. But those are singular words. You don't have to memorize them all. Key concept. We don't choose our answer based solely on what it sounds better. That is not good. Okay. Strategy number 2 is the KISS method. Keep it short and simple. I'm going to tell you right now, be looking to use it as often as possible. There you have it. If the only strategy you apply in the English section is the KISS strategy, your score will increase 100% of the time. Keep things short and simple. We want to stay away from the long, wordy sentences. So when you see something like this, the people who are in charge of buying for the company. Look at all that. Look how long that is, and look how much we can shorten it. That's an example. Yes, we're going to pick one of those answers. And then we choose between, product buyers, buyers of products, and buyers. Correct answer would be D. There you have it. Okay, what about this one? This was one on the test you took. More creations appeared at more. You see all that stuff that's underlined. Remember what they're going to do here. They are often going to put the short and most simple answer last because they want you and your brain to read this. Don't fall for that trick. When you see a big thing underlined, you start with the shortest and most simple answer. You plug that in, and if it makes sense, the game is over. We are done. We do not try and make sense of the other ones. Got it? So that is you being proactive and doing that. All right, here was another one. So now when I see this right here, concept, I am immediately looking at it and plugging in J first. They will often do that to us. They'll give us the shortest, most simple answer last on purpose, hoping we avoid it. Go with the short one first, and in that case it worked. Regardless of who created the art, game's over. I'm done. I do not need to disregard the unknown. No, see? All that wordy stuff. Stay away from it. Now, don't have any examples here, but an addendum to the KISS method is going to be the delete. If they ever give delete as an option, that's the one you want to try first. About half the time they give delete as an option, it will be the answer. What's the bad news on that? That means the other half the time it won't be. So you can't just say, oh, delete's an option. I got to pick this one. You can't just automatically take it, but it has to be your first option. Okay, remember that. That puts you in a good position to be successful. There you have about half the time, not always, but that's going to be your first option going forward on this KISS method. Okay, semicolons. Just remember this about semicolons. You can always tell if a semicolon is right or not. Remember the trick we learned. Comma and or comma but. If they have a semicolon and they're testing to see if it's correct, that's the test. Replace it with comma and or comma but. If either one of those work, you are good to go. If they don't work, then a semicolon is not right. Okay? So, here's an example. The road runs through a beautiful wooded alley, comma, and the railway line follows it. That would make sense. I could put comma and. Okay? So there you have it. Colons. You guys did awesome on these, so I won't spend much time on these. Colons are used in three main scenarios. List is the first one. Okay? There were 4 things I had to get from the supermarket. Colon. Apples, bananas, bread, and soda. Then, this is the one that was hard. I had you write this red and green puzzle, or this red and green phrase down in class. This is where one thought connects to the other. Life is like a puzzle. Half the fun is trying to work all the pieces together. If you just read the red part, it could not be a complete thought or a complete sentence on its own. If you just read the green part, it also could not be one on its own. But you put those two together, and it makes perfect sense. So that's where you're going to the second one. That's a lot more popular than you think as the tests have gone on over the years. And then number 3 can be a dramatic ending to a sentence. I know that can also be a hyphen, but a dramatic ending to a sentence. After studying so many hours for this ACT test, I just had one thing on my mind, colon, improvement. There you go, something like that, a dramatic ending. All right, moving on, commas. Commas, using too many commas is never a good thing. You see how wrong this looks. Stay away from the excess commas. Second thing you do with commas is emphasize the pause, okay? When you see a comma, pause for a second. If it doesn't sound right, then something's wrong. Now, if they start a sentence off with a comma, if they said sadly, comma, ooh, I'm immediately looking for that second comma. We're going to get to this in a second, but remember when you have 2 commas, they surround extra information. All right? But when they give us options, our first option is to try and go with no commas. We want to try that one first and make sure it reads smoothly and it flows smoothly. If it does so, that is often going to be the right answer. Okay, so here's an example. The greater pressure from the wind. Now, you see how that's got a comma in there? So when I'm doing this on the test, the first one I'm going to try is option C. Now look, this has 1 comma, 1 comma, 1 comma. This one has no commas. I'm going to try this one first. The greater pressure from the wind causes bonds to form quicker at the edge than in the rest of the snowflake. Hey, I did not need to pause. It read smoothly. It flowed smoothly. The game is over. The correct answer would be C. That's how you do it. Now, sometimes, once in a great while, but it'll happen, you'll read this option first and you'll be like, whoa, that just did not, and it will be pretty obvious to you. You'll be like, that did not flow at all. I need a pause there. And then when you do, that's when the commas come into play. Okay, so here's this one. Snowflakes form from white. Hey, there's no commas in here. You notice that? No commas. And then they try an option like this one with 3 commas. Never going to go from 0 to 3, ever. That read smoothly. Our answer would be no change. Okay. So there you have that one. Now, if the answers with no commas make sense, that's just an extension of the KISS method. It's really all it is. Keep it short and simple. The same rule goes for punctuation. Do not try and over-punctuate. That absolutely leads to problems. All right, so don't overuse commas. Always start with the answer option that has fewest, and if that answer makes sense, you go with it. All right, let's move on. Extra information. I just said that, right? Extra information is always surrounded by commas. So, extra information, okay? Patrick Mahomes, comma, quarterback of the Kansas City Chiefs, comma, likes to go fishing. I included quarterback of the Kansas City Chiefs as extra information. Okay? Not needed. That would be surrounded by commas. So, This was one on your test that we practiced. Okay, it all began as Pollock is likely to point out. Now, here we go. When you see something like this, this is where I'm going to actually start with J. I'm going to start with the one with no commas. It all began as Pollock is likely to point. It all began as Pollock is likely to point out. Now you notice that I almost wanted to pause after the word began. It all began as if I don't pause, it doesn't read very smoothly. So that's where I'm like looking to put in commas, and this is where, if you have a choice, if 0, 1, or 2, you look to the one with 2 commas, because that will surround extra information. Now go ahead right now. Here's option G. Look at option G and pretend I had a marker and I'm crossing out this information between the commas. Would it make sense? It all began with a single cork. I don't need all of this, do I? That's extra information surrounded by commas. Okay, so now you've just learned that extra information is surrounded by commas. There are certain words that will always be surrounded by commas if found in the middle of a sentence. There are multiple words, but there are 2 that stick out. However and though. However, especially. I don't know, lately they've been using that one more. But though's the other one. Those are by far the 2 most popular words found in the middle of a sentence surrounded by commas. So, she explained though. Anytime I see however or though in the middle of a sentence, surrounded by commas. Has to happen. Okay, so there we have it. The correct answer would be G. There you have it. All right, so watch for the extra information. Here we go. Strategy number 11 was verb tense agreement. We talk about this one in class. The ACT quite often underlines a verb, makes you put it in the proper tense. Anytime a verb is underlined, that is fantastic news. The only thing we have to do is we have to look at the other verbs used in the same or preceding sentence and make sure they are flowing in the same pattern. Hiking, running, walking. They're all ing verbs. You don't go hiking, walking, run, or hiking, walking, ran. Not happening. Okay, so they all got to match. So here you see this one. You just look at the verbs. Binding and shaping are the verbs. The only, look at this option B, binding and shape would be out right away. The only one that works in this one would be binding and shaping. Correct answer would be C. Okay, so moving on to strategy 14, redundancy. We'll remember how much fun this was in class. When we looked at it, we were laughing at how dumb some of the answers were. But on the ACT, you only want something to be said one time. One time's all you want to say it. You don't want it said twice. You get the idea? You see how redundant and annoying it? They're going to try and slip this past you. So anytime you see a repeat of information, you can cross that answer off. If they have anything in that answer that has previously been mentioned, that is a red flag. So let's take a look at this one. This was what we tried to steady ourselves with our walking sticks, but slipped and stumbled because of the jumbled rocks we were slipping on. Okay, you just said slipped and slipping. That's an example. That's out. So even though we used our walking sticks, now hold on. Did you see what I just did? I fell for it. I started with option B. I should have started with D. We tried to steady ourselves with our walking sticks, but slipped and stumbled with each step. Boy, that was quick. That was easy. I really like that. If you need to see it, go ahead and put in C, despite any efforts to remain steady. We tried to steady ourselves, blah, blah, blah. Despite any efforts to remain steady. That's a repeat. Same thing happened here with our walking sticks. Okay, walking sticks, walking sticks. Repeating information is bad. That is a just redundancy. When you see it, that is a red flag. All right. So here was one about the thankful note. Thankful note, expressing thanks. Repeats information out. Thank you note, expressing special thanks. Ooh, it's special. Out. Note of gratitude, expressing gratefulness. Same thing. Out right away. No, the answer has to be no change. And finishing up here in the English section, the subject-verb agreement. Now, We just said the verbs have to be in the same tense, right? We went over that. But there also has to be subject-verb agreement. Now, we just talked about making sure the verbs match. We also must make sure each sentence has subject-verb agreement. Okay, so here we go. My best friend was there or were there? Well, my best friend is a singular person, so you would equate it with he or she. He or she was there. My two best friends, they were there. I know those sound better, and you're like, well, don't, they just sound better. I knew that was the answer. Yeah, but we got to have reasoning and proper reasoning. There have been many tornadoes. Whoa. What do you think? Subject is tornadoes. Put the subject first in the sentence. Would you say the tornadoes has been around a lot this summer, or the tornadoes have been around a lot this summer? There you go. Have. Subject-verb agreement. Tornadoes is plural. They have. The hockey player and team mascot. They volunteer at the hospital. You wouldn't say they volunteers. That wouldn't make any sense. Okay? Here was one. High above the Missouri River rises the gleaming skyscrapers. The Missouri River is not the subject of this sentence. The gleaming skyscrapers is the subject. The gleaming skyscrapers rise high above the Missouri River. Okay, so you can reword the sentence to make sure that's perfectly fine. You must have subject-verb agreement. Okay? All right. So, we're going to skip ahead, and now we're looking to the math section overview. All right, there was English. You see? Not that bad. This is the math section overview. Now, math is the part that's going to stress some of you out. We're going to talk a little bit about it here. There's 45 questions in 50 minutes. It is still a sprint. Now, there's not 60 questions in 60 minutes. You do get more time per question now. But it's still, we can't take 3 or 4 minutes per question, especially early in the test. You've got to be fast and aggressive. All right. Now, most people don't like that part, but we're going to talk about strategies, being fast and aggressive, but we're going to talk about things we can use. So, here we go. Something to concept. The math test is 50% pre-algebra and algebra 1. Half the questions are stuff you learned in pre-algebra and algebra 1. Totally doable. 20% is geometry. 20% you learn in algebra 2. So you might be a junior just starting algebra 2. Well, you still know at least 70% of the test, and I understand you don't have all 20 of that yet, but that's fine. The math is the one area, guys, where there's 10% of the questions might be trig or pre-calc, and you may have never seen trig or pre-calculus before. Hey, and so here's what I tell people. You cannot let that negatively affect you. Now, up here, you can't say, oh, I have no chance at the math test. No. Hey, there's going to be some hard questions. You don't have to get them all right. So, and we know that going ahead of time. This is where you can also apply our guessing strategy that we talked about. But just remember, be smart, take care of the basics. I don't care if you miss a pre-calc or trig question, but if you missed like maybe how to find the average of a certain set of numbers, now that's something you know how to do. Okay, so after the English, now in the English section, we go one problem right after the other. In the math section, you can feel free to jump around however you see fit. If you come to question 12 and it is asking, maybe it's a trig question already, and that you look at that and you're like, oh, I don't know how to do this one. You can skip over it and go to the next one. You can absolutely jump around on the math test. On the English test, we can't do that. Math test, we totally can. Now, the math test still starts out easier, gets harder as it goes along. So, the first 5 to 10 questions are still going to be pretty easy. The last 5 to 10 questions get a little harder. They do that on purpose. That's perfectly fine. Okay? And there I'd say the easiest place on the math section, so depending on how many do you want to improve 3 points? Well, I need to get 5 more questions correct. The easiest place to do that is in the first 15. Because those are the things where it's all pre-algebra and algebra 1. You guarantee you know how to do it. Okay? So, also, now we get to kind of specific strategies here. Of the 45, at least 10 of them are going to be word problems. So we saw in class the other night how they give you word problems, but if I could translate what they really want us to do, like if I said, what's the first number 15 and 20 both go into? And the answer would be 60. Well, they'll phrase it in a way like, Tony is this event's happening every 15 seconds, and this second event is happening every 20 seconds. If they happen at 8:12, when's the next time they're going to happen? And you're like, and then they give you 8:13, 8:14, 8:15 as options. See, so they can make it sound hard. They're good at making it sound hard, but it's really not that bad. All right, the most important piece of advice I can give you in solving these, solve them as you read them, without question, one sentence at a time. Pencil has to be aggressive. Get your calculator out and ready to go. Okay? Now, midpoints and endpoints. Common sense. You can use that midpoint formula. There's the midpoint formula. If you like it, I support you 100% if you like that midpoint formula. You can also use common sense. Look at the x coordinates and just find what's in the middle. Hey, this point's 5, this point's 1. Oh, okay, what's the x coordinate in the middle? 3. Cross off any answer that doesn't have an x coordinate of 3. So there's an example. Here. What is the midpoint of 3 and 1? Oh my goodness. All I have to do is look at the x coordinates and say in between 3 and 1 is 2. Not -2, not -1. What the? No. Yes. No. Game's over. Answer's D. Just that quick. You don't have to draw it. You don't have to do some excessive formula. Use common sense. That is totally allowed on the ACT. Okay, so now, what if they, at midpoint 1, and this is going to be in the first 10 to 15 problems, what if they give us an endpoint and a midpoint? Well, now you can remember. Oh, okay. So if I go from -2 to 1, that's an increase of 3. I copy and paste that. I got to increase 3 again. 1 increased by 3 would be 4. Cross off the other answers. -4 increased by 3 would be -1. -1 plus 3 is 2. So our correct answer there would be E. Little things like that. Slope, let's get back to this. You got to know y equals mx plus b. Solve for y on one side. That is a basic skill all of you have. Okay, we talked about that. Slope in between 2 points. There's the formula if you like formulas. Okay, just use common sense. Y equals mx plus b, guaranteed to be one of the first 15 problems. Guaranteed. Rules of exponents. Man, yeah, we went over this. Now, are you sharp on these? Do you know all these? I have students in trig who still miss rules of exponents once in a while. It happens. There's going to be about 2 to 3 questions on rules of exponents. You got to review your 5 rules that we went over. Okay? Rule number 5 is being asked more and more. Now, you have this in your notes. Here was rule 5. Right? The rule is inside over the outside. A lot of times they'll give us this, and they'll say, they'll give us this, and they'll say, this is equivalent to which of the following, and then it'll give us options. They may reverse it and give us this. You have to be able to work both ways. Inside over the outside. That's what you got to remember. It's the inside over the outside. And what happens if there's no number right here before the radical? Then it means it's an automatic 2 because it's a square root. If they don't put anything there, like this is the 5th root, right? Because they put a 5 there. If they don't put anything there, we assume it's 2. It's a square root. All right, so now, here's how when you see a problem like this, this is what a lot of people do. They solve it. No, don't solve it. What? Don't solve it? Yeah, don't solve it. Solve it maybe piece by piece. Just look at the number part. Just do the numbers only. Do not solve this like you would a homework problem. This is a test. This is a time test. We got to be smart. Look at the numbers. 4 times -5 is -20. Divided by 10 is -2. I can eliminate any answer that doesn't have -2. What the heck are these two things? Yeah, like they're lost. So I'm either at B or E. That took about 5 seconds, and I am immediately down to 2 answers. Then I see the B's are the same, so I'm like, I'm not going to do those. They're the same. I'm not going to waste my time. I'll just do the A's. And now you know your rules. So, okay, here's a to the third and a to the fifth, written twice, right? The base is written twice, so you would add them and get a to the 8th over a to the 4th. And then when you have an 8 on top and a 4 on bottom, who wins and by how many? Top wins by 4. So the correct answer would be E. Know your rules of exponents. Okay, number 7, the Pythagorean theorem. Absolutely guaranteed to be on there. Numerous times, numerous questions. We use it on finding the missing sides of right triangles. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Again, guaranteed to be on there. And here's something I want to emphasize. They will never tell you to use it. They will never tell you to use it. They will never say, use the Pythagorean theorem or leave it listed for you. A squared plus B squared equals C squared to find the missing side of this triangle. They'll never tell you. So, how do you know, like when you use it and all that stuff? Any word problem that says north, south, east, west, that is an automatic Pythagorean theorem. Okay? Joey drove 12 miles north to Dyersville and 8 miles east to Esterville. If Joey could have driven in a straight line, how many miles would he have saved? Okay, like that's an example. The north, east. Anytime you see directional words, that's an automatic Pythagorean theorem. Abstract problems. These are the ones that you never see in your textbook. You never see. They're outside the box. They're almost IQ questions. Okay? And most students have no idea where to start or what to do. So if you see a problem like this, given y equals x over x minus 1 and x is greater than, which of the following is the possible value? That is where you have to be proactive and aggressive. So, if x is greater than 1, watch what I'm going to plug in for x. 2. That's all you get. Just do it. 2 divided by 2 minus 1. 2 divided by 1 is 2. So I'm looking at, I don't see that as a choice, but I might remember that. That was a positive 2. Now, if x is greater than 1, maybe I can plug in 5. 5 over 5 minus 1 is 4. That's like 1.2 something. So now I've never gotten a negative, so those are out. I've never gotten 0, so those are out. And both the answers I got were above 1. So if I had to pick, I would pick that one, which is the correct answer. Maybe some of you need one more. Well, pick 10. 10 divided by 10 minus 1 is 9. 10 divided by 9 is 1.1. Oh, no matter what, my answers are above 1. So there you have it. Pick stuff. That's an example. But you want to be proactive and aggressive. Don't think too deeply. Just get on it. All right? The 3 rules of basic geometry. You guys know there's 180 degrees in a triangle, 180 degrees in a straight line, and vertical angles are equal. Okay? All right. Circles. Here we go. Now, if I asked you right now what the area of a circle is, can you tell me? If you can't, that's a problem. You need to know that without question. So, the area of a circle is pi r squared or radius squared pi. That's the same thing. Circumference of a circle, you can call it diameter pi. Some of you call it 2 pi r. That's fine. It's the same thing. That's totally fine. But guys, you've got to know the area of a circle, and you've got to know the circumference of a circle. Those have got to be you must know those. Okay? So, the other thing is equations of circles. Just so we're clear, let's look at an example. Look at this one. This is an equation of a circle. When you see something x squared, something y squared, we know right away that's the equation of a circle. The center is the opposite of what you see. Always the opposite. So x minus 3 actually results in x being positive 3. Y plus 7. Y is negative 7. And then, where does 9 come from 81? You take the square root of the number on the right-hand side. So that is all stuff we have done before. All right, so let's take a look at this one. They have positive 8 and positive 5. That means in our answer, we're going to have negative 8 and negative 5. Oh, so it's either F or G. Just like that. I'm down to 2 choices. That's awesome. Radius is 9. This number over here is radius squared, which would be 81. Correct answer is F. Just that quick. All right. SOHCAHTOA. Yo, yeah. The anxiety some of you have with SOHCAHTOA. SOHCAHTOA. There are the definitions. You definitely need to know this. SOHCAHTOA's got 3 different levels. It's going to have an easy level, a medium level, and then it's going to have a hard level. That hard level is going to be trig related. You're going to see one question on the test that's probably going to be, unless you've taken trig, it's probably going to be above your head. You got to let it go. But you can't miss the easy ones. So you got to know these. Okay? So like right here, this would be level 1. This would be an easy one. If you know your definitions, you're going to be totally good to go. The definition of sine is opposite. So here's A. Opposite over hypotenuse. 7 over 9. There it is. It's that easy. Just as it can happen that quick if you know your definitions. Got to know your definitions of SOHCAHTOA. Okay? So here's an example, and I'll use a marker here of this one. This is the way they like to ask a SOHCAHTOA question. This is, I would say, is a medium one at the highest. It's a medium to easy. It's not hard. If you know anything about, if you just know the definitions of SOHCAHTOA, you can get this right every time. Now, what's the definition of sine? Well, what if I don't know the definition of sine? Well, if you don't know, then you're not going to get it right. So you must know sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Tangent is SOHCAHTOA, opposite over adjacent. Now it wants to know what is the value of cosine. Well, what's the definition of cosine? It's A over H, so CAHTOA. That means, hey, where's my A? Right here, 3. So 3 goes on top. What's my H on the bottom? 5. So the answer here would be 3 over 5. And there you have it. If you know your definitions, that's like free money. They're just trying to give you points. So take advantage of that and know that. Okay. I'll erase that as we keep moving on here. So the 3 levels of SOHCAHTOA, right? And I kind of go over level 2 questions. They make you do a little more. That was the one I just showed you was kind of like a borderline level 2. The first one I showed you was level 1. Hey, there's going to be some on level 3. There's going to be at least one question on level 3. And it might be law of sines, law of cosines. It might be the amplitude or the period of the function. Some of you are like, what is he talking about right now? Right. And that's what's going to happen. You're going to get to that SOHCAHTOA and it might be too hard. And that's fine. Don't panic. All right. Strategy 16, logarithms. Now this is happening. Remember, this is the circle of truth with logarithms. The little tiny thing raised over here equals the number next to the little tiny thing. It's like the circle of exponential truth. This translates into x squared becomes 25. What squared is 25? What would x be in that case? What squared is 25? The answer would be 5. 5 squared is 25. Okay, what about this one? The circle of truth. 3 raised to the third comes back to equal the x. 3 to the third is 27. See? And then 4 raised to what power comes back to equal 16? 4 squared. There's your rules of logarithms. That is a basic concept that they're going to do and cover for you. All right? Now, you don't need to write this down, but this was on the video. It's a little tiny thing raised. I just showed you it so you can ignore this part, right? Know that little circle of truth I just talked about. Now, we're going to skip this part about, this is, if you need this, this is higher level logarithms. We're going to skip this part. This was in the video that you could watch. Okay, so now let's get to, after logarithms, I. Have you seen things with I before? Here's what you got to know. I squared is -1, and I to the 4th is +1. This is probably the one that's even more important, is that I squared is -1. You got to know that one. A lot of times they'll have like 3i plus 2 in parentheses times 2i plus 5, and they have you FOIL it, and then you got to know one of the parts is I squared. Anytime you see I squared, you can replace it with -1. All right, f of x and g of x functions. Students get very scared when they see these problems. Nothing to get scared about at all. These are way easier than they perceive to be. Okay, so now when you see something like this, let f be the function, all this good stuff. What's the value of f of 3? When you see this right here, f of 3, all that means is plug 3 in for x. That's all that means. Instead of f of x, plug 3 in for the x. So you plug 3 in. That's all you do. You do that, and then you should have no problem. All right, now here's a one that's a hair bit harder, but this is going to be like f of g of x. So you always start from the inside out. Here's g of -3. So you take -3 and you plug it in right here for x, right in the g equation. Then when you do that, let's do that real quick. What's -3 squared? 9. 9 minus 4 is 5. That means this part is 5. So now my goal is to find f of 5. Simply take 5, plug it back into the f equation. 2 times 5 is 10, plus 1 is 11. That's how you do those. See, they look really hard, and they look, if you haven't seen them before, they might be really confusing. But if you watched your videos and done your homework, you should be fine. All right, now we move on to the reading section. So here are the 4 sections of the reading section. You need to know these. You have written those down. You should know those. Literary narrative, social science, humanities, and natural science. Okay? So the first one's going to be a fictional story about a character, often told from the narrator's point of view. Then we have a social science one. This was the one about Vavilov and his apples that you read. And it's got a lot of numbers in it, percentages. Then there's the humanities. That's all about emotions and feelings. Okay? Characters and their feelings and how they relate to one another. Then you get to the natural science, which has nothing to do with feelings at all. That is pretty much straight out of a science textbook. Okay? So that one is very factual, very factual, very informative. No emotions, no characters. So, by now, you should have a preference. You should be knowing when you walk into that test on Saturday, oh, it's the reading test. I'm going to do this one first, then this one second, then this one third, then this one last. There is no wrong answer, but you've got to have a plan. So there you see, we're all different, so there is no wrong answer. But you've got to have a plan. Do the passages in the order of your liking. That's what I say. Following that helps keep your enthusiasm up, helps keep your energy up. If I do the first passage, and I now get 10 minutes per passage, but let's say I do the humanities first, and I thought it was a halfway decent story, it was okay, and remember, I peeked ahead, I looked at the answers, I saw everything, and I'm like, oh, I got my questions marked, here we go, I was done in 8 minutes, now I'm ahead of schedule. When you start off with the passage you like, it makes it so much easier. All right, People in their relationships, emotions, that's what we talk about the literary narrative section. So you just got to know. I won't give too many details here, but you got to know what they have. Watch for a chronological order question. That happens often in the literary narrative. Okay? We talk about characters and their emotions, all that good stuff. Let's move on. Social science section. That's the one where it's kind of dry, a little, about Pavlov and his apples. You can still have relationships, but the relationships don't have to happen between people. They can happen between the character and in this case, his apple trees. Okay? So, not as much, I'll go faster. Not as much emotion, but there's still people in relationships. So, note, anytime you see numbers or percentages, you take note of that. Write that down. Feel free to underline. Do whatever you need to do. Humanities section, that's the one all about the people and the feelings. Totally big into the feelings here. So if that's you like those, then I would highly recommend you read the humanities section first. Characters and their feelings are huge in that one. That was the one that we read about the musician. And see, some of you might remember these stories, and some of you might be like, I don't even remember that story. Well, hey, if you don't remember the story, that's fine, but that's a point in and of itself. You're not going to get attached to these characters. Just look for the answers and get the heck out of there. Okay? And then you have the natural science section. Again, kind of boring for some people. Numbers and percentages, very dry. There's no emotions, no characters. It is straight out of a science textbook. All right. So remember this strategy. This is the number one thank you card I've gotten over the years. Skimming the questions first. You can look at the questions on the right-hand side before you read the passage. It's the biggest advantage in the world. And now that we have more time, it's even more doable. Skim the questions first. Give a little gist of it. Like if they say, in lines 17 through 20, the character is mainly trying to. Okay, now I put a little star by 17 through 20 over there because I know, that question is answered directly in there. I'm going to get it right. So you're going to need to, hopefully by now, you know what the order of the passages you're doing it in, and you've practiced skimming. Practicing skimming is super important. Okay? All right, let's go to this one. When I say read, skim, and reword. Hey, nobody's words make more sense to your brain than yours do, right? Nobody's words make more sense to our brains than our own words. So when you read a paragraph or two, just put it in your own words, what you just read. Hey, everybody who's ever read before has done this. Have you ever read a page in a book and you got to the bottom and you're like, I don't even really know what I read. I just read it and I didn't even pay attention. And you kind of went brain dead. Everybody's probably done that, right? I guarantee you I have. You can't do that on the ACT. This is why when you're reading it and you get a paragraph or so, you reword it, okay? And that keeps you accountable, paying attention. Marking up your test booklets. It's absolutely not only allowed, but strongly encouraged. That is something I highly, highly recommend. It helps us emphasize important information and keep our thoughts in line. So, if they say, if you peek the questions ahead of time and you look at things and you say like, he's talking about, this question's about flying a kite when he was 10 years old. Now you know that ahead of time. And when I start reading about, he's flying a kite, I'm underlining things. I'm underlining emotional words, right? Because that is a key. You can mark up your test as much as you want. All right, so there was an example like what I did. And you see these emotional words, angry and disheartened. I was like, I'm writing that down. There was question 8. Anytime you see hyphens, huge thing. Hyphens or quotation marks, always important. Okay, mark those down. So, in summary, marking up your test booklet, great idea. All right. Look for any wrong information in any of the answers. Any wrong information. When you see an answer, the longer the answer is, the more likely it is to have wrong information in it. So that's actually a good thing. Don't be intimidated by the long answers. I actually like the reading questions with long answers. They're easier. I look for any wrong information in any of the answers. Piggybacking on this, I also look for strong dramatic wording. We're going to get to that in a minute. But anytime they try and make an answer sound strong, that's a red flag. Okay, now, if you remember the reading, you cannot get caught up spending 2 or 3 minutes on a single question. Now, it's helped a little bit because now that we've increased the time, we get a little over 1 minute per question. That's the average. Well, what happens if I spend 3 minutes on one question? Now I'm 2 minutes behind. I'm 2 questions behind. Now that's where you get into trouble. So if you are 75% sure the answer is C, mark C and move on. You do not have to go back and find that extra 25% of assurance. Almost every time, and this is kind of very mathematically ironic, if you are 75% sure, that's the answer you're going to go with 100% of the time anyway. You are. So that's why don't spend too much time messing around on that. Okay? All right. We'll skip this. Quickly is the first and last sentences of each paragraph. I don't see you guys getting quite as stressed for time here with the extra time and fewer questions. But if it happens, and it may, you go ahead and there's going to be more answers in the first and last sentences of each paragraph than anywhere else. Get that first sentence, the last sentence, and then skim the part in between. Hyphens and quotation marks. Anytime you see hyphens and quotation marks, underline it, mark them. That has X. Remember, hyphens surround extra information. We learned that in the English section. Use that in the reading section. Pay special attention, okay, to when this happens, when you get the hyphens and quotation marks. Number 14, the Gholam Ali Maghtabi factor. Don't be intimidated by the words they use. Man, I was reading a New English section the other day, and they were using names and stuff, even in the English. I had no idea how to say their name. I quit caring about how to say it, and when I came to the word, I just ignored it, and I focused on the punctuation. Same thing happens here. The Gholam Ali Maghtabi factor. Don't let the fact, how come they don't call him Tom Smith? Well, there's a reason why, because then your brain would be free. When they call him Gholam Ali Maghtabi, your brain gets cluttered. That's a fact. So, they use hard to pronounce names on purpose, ignore them. The goal is to crush your confidence, and that's what they can distract you from the focus of the essay. You focus on the relationships, the emotions, and the events. If you focus on those 3 things, you're going to be in much better off shape. Strategy number 15, infer. When they say infer, remember what that means. Infer over the 36 questions is going to happen 2 to 4 times. If they ever say infer, that is saying it without saying it. Remember the example I gave in class on how my wife was inferring I was supposed to do something and I wasn't picking up on it. She never said the words exactly, but she kind of gave a hint here or there, right? Well, I'm just not smart enough to pick up on it. When they say infer, the answer will not be in the passage. I'm going to say that again. When they say the word infer, the author was inferring, or on line 78, this character was inferring blah. Well, that means the answer itself will not be in the passage. You have to read between the lines. Okay. So, there you have about infer. Strategy 16. Keep an eye out for transition words or phrases. On the other hand, meanwhile, if that's a flow, right? So we got to watch for those. Anytime you see like a conflict of thought, however, on the other hand, those sentences, okay, that start with that. I am paying more attention to that sentence. Simply for flow. Strategy 19, superlatives and dramatic answers. Now, remember what a superlative is. That's these things. The best, the worst, the most, the least, the greatest, the tall. That's an example. If they use these in the answers, that's an immediate cross-off. Immediate. If they're trying to make the answer sound strong, that's because the answer is weak. They will not try and make the answer sound strong. If they use dramatic wording, that is a red flag right away. Okay? So there you see it. Superlative or red flag. Superlatives, dramatic wording. When they try and make things sound strong, that's a red flag. You can cross it off. And though, you may only see this, I don't know, out of 36 questions, you may only see it on 6 to 8 times throughout the whole test. Well, you only see it on 6 to 8 questions, but then you just use it as a minute. Like maybe question 17, option C, has, just this horribly dramatic word. That's an immediate cross-off. That every little bit helps you along the way. All right, and now we're into our last thing, which is science here. So, by the time the science rolls around, maybe just like you are right now, we've been at it 1 hour and 1 minute. By the time the science test rolls around, you will be mentally exhausted. That is going to happen to everybody. Happens to me. Okay? You've been there for 2.5 hours, 2.5 hours. You're into the game. It's near the end. You're getting tired. The science test, I've always argued, it doesn't just test your science skills, but it also tests your concentration and your mental toughness. You have got to stay in there and stay focused when that happens. There's going to be moments during the science where you are exhausted and you are ready to quit, and that's when you have to hang in there. All right, 3 types of passages in the science. Here they are. Data representation, where it's all about the graphs. The answers are more short. Most people like those. Research summary, that's the one where there's a little longer explanation in the passage, and you need to connect the dots a little bit from graph to graph. This one's a little harder. Then there's conflicting viewpoints, which people either tend to really like or really dislike. Conflicting viewpoints is when they say, scientist A thinks this, scientist B thinks this, scientist C thinks this, and then they'll say, which of the following scientists would agree with the following? And then you got to look at each one and see, okay, which one would say what? All right. Strat A, science, escalating difficulty. Now, the escalated difficulty happens on the test as a whole. The first passage is going to be easier than the third or fourth passage. And the first passage and third and fourth passage are going to be easier than the last passage. There are 6 total passages. Now, there's a slow increase in that regard. They get a little bit harder, but it's not as bad as the math section. The math section is more steep. This happens a little slow. Okay? Now, not only happens on the test as a whole, but it happens within each passage. So, if passage number 4 is 21 through 26, what does that mean? That means question 21 and 22 are going to be easier than question 25 and 26. Guaranteed, 21 and 22 are going to be easier. How does that help us? Well, if we do question 21 and we look at it's the first question in the passage, and we look at it and think, man, this is just so hard, this is so difficult. No, it's not. You're overthinking it. I promise you, question 21 is going to be the easiest question in the passage. Then you go to 26. It's the last question in the passage. And if you read it and you're like, oh, that was super easy. I had no problem on that one. That's a red flag. That's not good. If you read that last question and you think that was too easy, well, that means they suckered you in. So be careful on that last passage, on that last question of each passage. All right. Now, the language clues. Remember the language clues we talked about in class. 23, on average, 23 out of 40 questions start with one of those 4. So that's almost 60% of the questions will start with one of these 4 passages. Now remember, according to are the easier ones. They tend to be found in the first questions of each passage. According to, that means the answer is right there in the graph. Consider, okay, now that means it's a little more thought, meaning I'm going to have to connect maybe A to B or B to C. I'm going to have to do some work there. Based on. Based on is a multi-step problem, guaranteed. When you see the words based on, you know that's going to be multi-step. And then number 4 is suppose that. They make you use your imagination. Like, suppose this happened or suppose that happened. And what you have to do is you have to read the graph and make a prediction based on that. Not near as hard as you may think. And okay, now strategy 16. We did not get to this one in class, but excuse me. When you first glance at information on a chart, you got to look for patterns all over the place. So you want to be proactive with information. So when I see something like this, I'm noticing right away how things go down. I'm noticing patterns, right? I look at a table and I notice patterns. I'm like, wow, 1.2, those 3 went down, and now all of a sudden this guy is way out there. That is an outlier to me. So, not a lot of patterns here. Proteins went up consistently. There was a question on this one, how proteins went up consistently. If you paid attention to the patterns, you got it. Then this pattern, not a whole lot, but then all of a sudden this one, again, peanuts was like extremely low. You pay attention to things like that. Okay? All right. Little things like that will add up to a lot of positive things. That's the end. You guys are taking this test. I want to wish you the best of luck. If you have any questions, you can email me. I am all in on helping you guys out. Okay? I'm all in on helping you guys out. Now, because you've taken the class, you can take the class again and again. So, you just got to email me, contact me. You are free to come as often as you want for the rest of your high school career at no charge. I am all in on helping you guys out. I will do whatever I can to help you guys out. Okay? So, with that said, that wraps things up. I want to wish you guys the best of luck. You were a great class to have. And now, go do your best on Saturday. Go have fun, and you guys will do awesome.